Hello, my name is Jason Adrians. Today is 4/29/2025, and this is my Unit 4 presentation on Gene Therapy Comes of Age. So to give some background information on the article Gene Therapy Comes of Age, the first thing you need to understand in order to understand gene therapy is you have to understand genetic disorders. So a genetic disorder is essentially bad DNA that codes for bad RNA that codes for bad proteins. Genetic order, or normalcy, is good DNA that codes for good RNA that codes for good proteins. So the idea of gene therapy is that you connect the two. So a genetic disorder is just bad DNA that codes for bad RNA that codes for bad proteins. So if you take the bad DNA and correct it to be good DNA, or you totally take out that gene and then put in the good gene, then you will essentially have eliminated that genetic disorder. You will have good DNA that codes for good RNA that codes for good proteins. So this idea was first researched and proposed in the early 1970s. And while that was being researched and trials were being done, there was a few setbacks that created a lot of mistrust in the whole idea of gene therapy. Among these setbacks were adverse immune responses and leukemia. So this kind of stunted the whole gene therapy research and the whole funding behind it and everything that gene therapy stood for. So people kind of backed off on it. And then into the early 2000s and 2010s, gene therapy has kind of made a comeback. Because despite all the setbacks, research was still being done. Trials might not have been conducted, but research was still being done. And in the early 2000s, 2010s, gene therapy has kind of made a comeback to the point where it's a viable technology to correct genetic disorders. In the article, authors talk about how gene therapy has progressed and ultimately how it has become a viable option for treating multitude of diseases. One of the diseases they talk about is the disease SCID. SCID has an informal name and it's known as bubble boy disease. And this has been treated by gene-corrected stem cells that are injected into the body. And then these stem cells are able to multiply once they're in the body and then create the good protein that the person was missing from the genetic disorder that they had. Another example is hemophilia. Hemophilia is often treated by blood transfusions. So when patients have received gene therapy that have hemophilia, the number of blood transfusions have been reduced or completely eliminated since receiving gene therapy. Another example is the drug Luxturna, which is a gene therapy medication that corrects a eye genetic disorder. Overall, the authors have proved that gene therapy is not just like a theory anymore. It's an actual viable option for people. It's essentially entered a new phase in which it can treat a lot of genetic disorders and is very promising for the future. In my personal opinion, I found the article both hopeful and realistic. Gene therapy has kind of made promises in the theory behind that it can cure genetic diseases from the root cause, the DNA itself. And this article has given evidence that there has been people that have been cured through gene therapy. And as someone who's going into the medical field, it's kind of exciting to see that, because for a lot of years, especially, early on in medicine, the whole idea of medicine was that you should just kind of manage symptoms and try to get rid of the symptoms itself rather than cure the root cause. And with this technology, it kind of gives light on, or I don't know if it gives light on, but kind of gives hope for finding and curing the root cause of diseases. And it kind of turns the whole field of medicine into, it's not going to be about managing symptoms so much in the future, but rather curing the actual the problem. At the same time, I agree with the authors, because with this technology being so revolutionary and so new, there's a lot of questions to be raised about the accessibility that this therapy offers. This therapy can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, and not a lot of people can swing that amount of money to receive this care and to be cured for good. So for right now, it raises a lot of questions about the equity and care for this therapy. However, in the future, I do believe the cost will be driven down, and it will be it will play a transformative role in medicine, and I think that's very promising and hopeful for the future. Thanks for listening.